everyone and welcome to the mid-year book freakout tag. We're now in June, which means it's time to do the mid-year book freakout tag because we are now in the middle of the year. So I'm not going to do any sort of big intro to this or anything. I'm just going to get right into the question. Question number one is the best book you've read so far in 2022. I have several. The first one is Amari and the Night Brothers. I absolutely loved this book when I read it. I love like the Men in Black vibes. I really enjoyed the general storyline of it, the plot twists, everything else. I cannot wait for the sequel. It was an amazing middle grade. I highly recommend it. I've also got to mention The Wicked and the Divine. I've only read the first volume in this one so far, but I really enjoyed like the look at the gods. I really enjoyed the art style of it, the general sort of storyline of it, and I'm now kicking myself that I haven't read it sooner, but I am now delaying reading the rest of the series because I'm waiting for it to go on sale and then I'll be buying the next couple, I think, but I genuinely really enjoyed the first volume. I've also got to mention The Banks here because this was one of my favourite graphic novels I've read this year. It's a contemporary heist novel, graphic novel kind of thing, and I really love the family dynamics of this one. I really love the storyline of it, and I am just desperate for more. I don't think this is going to get a second volume though. I really wish it would though because it was so good. I would love to have like flashback stories with like the older generation when they were young and doing heists, the family now doing more heists, things like this. I found it so much fun. I'd love a whole series, essentially. I would love a whole series. I've also got to mention Rat Queens, which is a series which was the perfect mixture of Deadpool and I Hate Fairyland, in the sense that you've got these women who are like basically mercenaries kind of thing, and they swear, they are hilarious in a lot of places, they are ready for battle at any moment. It's so funny, so creative. It's a wonderful fantasy graphic novel series. I absolutely love it. I've also got to mention Raybearer. I love the world building of this and the characters and everything else. It's also got asexual representation in there as well, in a side character, which is fantastic. I'm always here for asexual representation in any book I can get my hands on, and I absolutely loved the representation as well as the just characters in general, the storyline, everything else. The world building was also incredible. I loved this book and I cannot wait to read the sequel as well for this one, which is Redemptor. Hopefully I'll read that this year, fingers crossed, but I don't know. On top of that, I've also got Show Us Who You Are, as well as A Kind of Spark by Elle McNichol. These are actually contemporary own voices autistic books and I loved them. I won't talk about them too much here because they are answers to a few other questions. There's also Gallant, which is a V.E. Schwab book. It was the perfect mixture for me in terms of it being like Crimson Peak meets Coraline. It was creepy, it was spooky, and all of that good stuff. The cover is also absolutely stunning, so that was amazing as well, and I just genuinely absolutely loved this book when I read it. I've also got the Way of Weird series. This is by Jason Aaron. It's a Doctor Strange series where essentially the magic of the world is being basically taken, and magicians and wizards and sorcerers and like general magic users are all being killed, and this was such a fun series, seeing Doctor Strange team up with like magic as well as Scarlet Witch, Brother Voodoo, people like this, and they're trying to save magic. It was a really great series. I loved it. Question number two is the best sequels I've read so far in 2022. Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe again was amazing. I wasn't as much of a fan of the first one, which is Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, because it felt just kind of a bit plotless in a few places, whereas this one actually had a proper plot to it. There was an explanation as to why Wade is doing what he's doing and why he's killing the Marvel Universe. I also really loved seeing his mindscape as he's doing this, because he's actually being mind controlled to kill everyone essentially, and he's sort of like imagining different scenarios where like he's in battle with these people but he's on their side and he's like killing bad guys, but it actually turns out he's killing like the heroes essentially, and there's a whole load of stuff like that throughout it. I absolutely loved it. I loved seeing all the different ways Wade would kill my faves, even though he was killing my faves, but it was an absolutely amazing read. I highly like, I highly recommend it if you are into the Marvel Universe. Though I will say there's a lot of triggering content in there, so be warned about that, but it was amazing. I've also got to mention The Stone Sky, which was the final book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I loved this one as well. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant end to the series. I will say that the science on occasion did go completely over my head, but apart from that, I absolutely loved it. Just in general, I thought it was a really good wrap-up end to the series. And then I've also got to mention Until the End, which is the final, for now, Skullduggery Pleasant book. The plot twists of this one, the storyline of it in general, the callbacks to the previous books, the things we found out in this one, then like just everything that, from the dedication to the final message at the end, I was in love. The final line of the actual story itself had me nearly crying. My theories were correct. It was so good. It was so good. I absolutely loved it. So good. Such a good sequel. Can't recommend it enough. Question number 3 is a new release I haven't read yet but want to. There's Shang-Chi versus the Marvel Universe. I read Shang-Chi Brothers and Sisters last year, and this is the next volume in that series. I have not read it yet. I really want to though, but I need to reread Brothers and Sisters first because I can't remember what happened in it. I've read a lot of Marvel comics in between reading that one and these ones, so I want to like basically reread Brothers and Sisters before I go into Shang-Chi versus the Marvel Universe. There is also the 3rd Black Widow volume, which I think is called The Smoking Gun. I can't remember what it's called, but this is the current Black Widow run that I really want to read as well. I've really enjoyed it so far. It's focusing on Natasha and also Yelena, and I love that. Also, you see Clint and Bucky as well, which is great, but it's essentially just a Black Widow story at its heart, which I love. I really want to continue on with that series. I haven't bought that volume yet, but I'm hoping to soon. And then also Only a Monster, which is a novel I haven't read yet, which is a story all about a girl who's a monster along with her family, and then the boy she likes ends up being a monster hunter, if I remember rightly. I have not read that yet. I really want to. And then also there is The Bone Spindle, which is Indiana Jones meets Sleeping Beauty. That's all I really needed to know. I just really want to read it and I haven't yet, so I really need to get to that one as well. Question number 4 is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Melissa Albert's Our Crooked Hearts. I really enjoyed reading The Hazelwood and the Night Country. This is her latest book. I admittedly haven't read Tales from the Hinterland, which is actually on my priority list for the second half of the year, so I really want to read that one. And then I also want to read Our Crooked Hearts. If I remember rightly, I've actually got it on pre-order, I think. Probably. I think I have. Anyway, I definitely want to read that one. There's also the Sirwa Boateng's Guide to Vampire Hunting. I apologise right now if I've pronounced that wrong. I tried looking it up. I couldn't see a pronunciation guide anywhere, so if anyone's got any references or help with that, please leave the links down below or the explanation down below. I'd be entirely grateful. But essentially this is a middle grade all about vampire hunting, and that's all I really needed to know. I am really into spooky middle grade at the moment, and I'm also really into vampires because I've been reading Vampires Never Get Old and also watching First Kill, and my love of vampires is coming back, so I really want to read more vampire books. And then there's also Space Band, which is Tom Fletcher's new book. This is about the worst band on Earth being beamed up into space, and they end up having to try and win a battle of the bands to become the greatest band in the galaxy, which sounds amazing. I'm always here for Tom's books. There's also The Whale Watchers, which I didn't even look up what it's about. I just knew it was by Dougie Poynter, and Dougie Poynter and Tom Fletcher are both members of McFly. They are my two favourite members of McFly actually as well, and I will read anything these boys write, all four of them. Anything they write I will read, so I didn't even look it up. I just clicked pre-order essentially. And then there's also Carrie Hope Fletcher's new book as well, which is the Double Trouble Society, which is a middle grade about witches. And again, I don't know much else because I went, well, it's Carrie Hope Fletcher. I'm a big fan of Carrie Hope Fletcher. I am pre-ordering that immediately. So those are the ones I'm really excited for. I'm sure I've missed some out. Actually, I have Strange Academy Volume 3 I definitely want to read as well. Whenever that comes out, there's also probably multiple other 2022 releases in terms of comics that I've forgotten about, but I'm just going to leave it there because I think this video is going to be long enough without me going into even more of the releases I want to read in terms of comics. Question number 5 is the biggest disappointment, Aphrodite IX. I've mentioned this a few times, but this was just incredibly sexist in a lot of places and a bit creepy, because this was supposed to be like a Winter Soldier type storyline, in the sense that you've got this cybernetic assassin who forgets everything every time they murder someone. Sort of like the Winter Soldier, though the Winter Soldier gets wiped, I think Aphrodite just forgets and she's got no idea who she is really and stuff like this. But essentially it was just really, really sexist in how it was drawn. It was basically just an excuse for the reader to look down her top or up her skirt, or if she wasn't in that outfit, she was essentially in what can only be described as a cloak with a BDSM harness, and that was not fun. I'm not kink shaming anybody, but that was just not for me. And on top of that as well, she had a really creepy relationship with her creator, because she kept on calling him daddy and things like this, and it was a bit creepy. Not to kink shame anybody, but not for me. Essentially it was a massive disappointment. I was so looking forward to reading it, and it just wasn't for me, was not for me. Question number 6 is the biggest surprise. Elle McNichol. Elle McNichol is the biggest surprise of the year for me, because I do not read contemporary. I read one contemporary last year, which was the book Slay by Brittany Morris, and that was a contemporary with a sci-fi sort of twist, so I was fine reading that, whereas Elle McNichol is basically straight contemporary with the exception of Show Us Who You Are, which does have an AI sort of twist to it, whereas A Kind of Spark has absolutely nothing in terms of that. It is just straight up contemporary, and I do not usually read contemporary, but I devoured these books. I love them. I cannot now wait to read Elle McNichol's next book, which I've completely forgotten the name of, but either way I cannot wait to read it. She's now an auto-buy author for me. I absolutely love her work. If you're looking for own voices, autistic books, check out Elle McNichol. She is amazing. It is so relatable, and these were the books I needed as a kid. I needed them as a kid, I still need them now. I love them, they are brilliant, and they came completely left field for me in terms of like enjoying them so much. I had no idea how much I could enjoy a contemporary book, and now I want to read more contemporary because of these books, which is not like me at all. Essentially it was a massive shock, to say the least. It was a massive shock. Question number 7 is the favourite new author. Again, it's Elle McNichol. I loved her work so much for this, so moving on, because it's the same answer again and I don't want to spend my entire time just gushing about Elle McNichol here. Question number 8 is the newest fictional crush. I have a couple. The first one is the God of Death from Skullduggery, because he was described as having like he was described very emo, in the sense that he had like the black nail varnish on and the black eyeliner, and his description made me fall in love with him. He was literally in like 2 chapters of this book, and in total probably about 10 pages of this entire chunky book, and I just loved him. I fell in love with him immediately. It was just like he was described as my type, and then they went, oh yeah, he's also the God of Death, and I went, yes, okay, I love you. And then there's also Stephen Grant and Mark Spector. Not the comic book versions. The comic book versions are very, very different for these characters. I'm talking about the TV version played by Oscar Isaac, because I loved those ones. I've got to admit, Moon Knight comics sometimes mostly hit or miss for me, and Mark and Stephen are not to be fancied, and neither is Jake actually in the comics, because they're not very nice people. But in the TV show they were incredibly lovable, especially Stephen. Stephen is definitely neurodivergent in some way or other, and I absolutely loved him. He was a complete dork, and I loved him, and Mark was a complete badass, and I loved him. But essentially Mark and Stephen, I can only describe it as they were the 2 sides of the same coin of the character archetypes I love, because on one side you have Stephen, who's like the curly haired boy next door, dork, probably neurodivergent, socially awkward, needs a hug, socially outcasted, all the rest of it. That's my kind of archetype. And then you had Mark, who was essentially Mark was a badass. He had a very tragic backstory, and he was a badass. That's all I've got. He was an absolute badass, and he did what needed to be done and things like this, and I really enjoy those types of characters. So they were basically the two archetypes of characters I really love. I cannot comment on Jake Lockley yet because he was literally in the show for like 3 minutes right at the end and was just hinted at throughout, so I can't really sort of speak to what I think about Jake Lockley properly, further than to say I'm just really excited to see more of him in the future. But Mark and Steven in the TV show were definitely new crushes, without doubt. Question number 9 is newest favourite character. I've got Murderbot here because Murderbot was unbelievably relatable in the terms of them being very socially awkward and not wanting to talk to people, and the fact that they just wanted to spend their entire day watching soap operas. Now personally, I don't want to watch soap operas, but I do want to watch all the TV. I have been marathoning a lot of TV recently in terms of like Stranger Things as well as The Boys as well, because those 2 new series came out, so I've been watching those. I've also been absolutely marathoning as well Umbrella Academy before the next series comes out, and I'm also going to be going on to Westworld as well because Westworld is also coming out, and that's without also mentioning Miss Marvel, Jurassic Park, because Jurassic World Dominion came out. I've been marathoning a lot of things recently, and that's all I really want to do. So Murderbot was very relatable in that sense of just going, oh, I don't want to do any work, I just want to watch the TV. Like, relatable isn't in it. And then I've also got to mention the Moon Knight boys as well, again, because they were brilliant characters. On top of that, I've also got to mention Khonshu as well, who is the avatar that the Moon Knight boys are representing. He was brilliant. I also loved Layla in the TV series as well. She was fantastic to like watch as well, especially when she became the Scarlet Scarab. Question number 10 is the book that made you cry. I don't cry at books, so moving on. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy. Elle McNichol's books, for obvious reasons I have mentioned. Arusha and the Nectar of Immortality was a fantastic ending to the series. I loved it. Again, the references were brilliant. The final battle reminded me a lot of Endgame in a lot of places, and I just really like the ending, so it made me very happy to read. Avengers Illuminati, which was a reread. I still love this series. I still love this series of one-shots of like the various Illuminati characters discussing what they need to do, how to keep things safe, how they're exploring like the Infinity Stones, fighting against Kree, things like this. Absolutely amazing. Made me ridiculously happy to read again, especially after seeing Multiverse of Madness. I've also got to mention Rat Queens as well, finally, because art style, characters, creative swearing, brilliant storyline, generally just made me very happy to read. And now I'm putting off reading the final books because I don't want it to end. Essentially, that's what I've got. Oh, and also Paper Girls, because I also really love Paper Girls. Paper Girls gave me perfect Stranger Things vibes, and it's just fun. Paper Girls is so much fun, and it's also getting adapted this year as well, which is so exciting. So I've also got to mention Paper Girls quickly in here. That wasn't in my notes, but I had to mention it. Question number 12 is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. With This Kiss was stunning. I mean, the sprayed edges were absolutely stunning. I absolutely love that one. Gallant as well. Again, the stenciled edges were incredibly beautiful. The under the dust jacket art, the end pages, everything stunning. Bronzed Beast as well. I really like the cover for this one. It's absolutely stunning. I probably have missed a few, but those are the ones that come to mind first. And then finally, question number 13 is what books do you need to read before the end of the year? I have a full video going through this for my priority list for the second half of the year. But then there's also Something is Killing the Children, which is a horror graphic novel series. There's also The School for Good and Evil, which is coming out as an adaptation as well that I really want to see. There's also Thor by Jason Aaron, which I will actually be reading next month because Thor Love and Thunder is coming out, and the Jason Aaron run is actually the direct basis for the film, so I'm going to be reading those. My entire Black Panther collection, because Black Panther's coming out. This is also including the Shuri novel as well, and also the Okoye one if I can get hold of that. There's a lot. To say the least, there is a lot of things I need to get through. Also, obviously, like Champions and obviously the rest of Miss Marvel, She-Hulk. I have the She-Hulk collection to get through. I think that's about it. I mean, that's enough to be getting on with. So I'm gonna stick with that for now, because otherwise, like I said in that priority video, I will be putting far too many things on this list and I will just be here forever. and I won't get anything done because I'll be too intimidated by everything I've just mentioned. And that is the end of the mid-year book freakout tag, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. Comment down below, tell me the best book you've read so far this year, I'd love to know. Or if you don't have that much time, leave me a calendar related emoji down below to let me know that you were here. I'll also leave a link down below to all of my social media if you want to check it out, including to the Comic Book Sanctum, which is my website dedicated to Marvel Comics, which is going to have a ton of stuff about Miss Marvel, Thor, and all the other Marvel comics I've just mentioned coming up over the rest of the year, and then obviously into next year and all the rest of it, so check that out if you are interested. I'll also leave a link down below as well to my Etsy and Redbubble store, which sells bookish merch and bookish bullet journal stuff if you are interested in that, or if you just want to see any more of my videos where I hopefully read some of the books I've just mentioned, please click subscribe here, and over here will be the link to my previous video. But until next time everyone, bye!